One thing that stands out for me is gratitude. That to me is one of the defining words of conservatism. Being grateful for the things that you have that you don't deserve and wanting to preserve those things. Privilege today is a horrible thing. Privilege is supposed to be a wonderful thing. It means that you have certain things because people who were here before you made some sacrifices. And I see some form of a revival in Christianity, in the desire to preserve Western civilization, and you could say conservatism, broadly speaking. And I think partly it's because of the fact that these things are so under threat. The world has become increasingly secular, increasingly un-Christian, and then to an extent anti-Christian. So the biblical view of freedom is, Paul, for example, in the New Testament spoke of, he was in prison and he still said that he's free. And they were beating him with whips and he was chained up, and he said, but he's a free man because he believes in Christ.
Sure.
And freedom was measured not by doing whatever you want to do. So if you lived in the fruits of the flesh, you are not a free man, you're a slave. If you do whatever you want to do, if you give in to your sinful desires, that's not a sign of freedom. That's a sign of slavery. In South Africa, if you protest peacefully, you don't really get what you want. But if you set something on fire, if you burn down a library or a school bus or something, then the government gives you what you want. And so then the protesters or the potential protesters learn, okay, so that's the way to get what you want, is you need to commit violence and you need to commit arson.
What should a government do?
The classical view is life, liberty and property. The government should protect your life, you should be safe. The government should protect your freedom, or the government shouldn't be the guardian of your freedom, but the government should provide a framework in which you have a significant degree of freedom, and you can, for example, start businesses, you can appoint people. You're not over-regulated by the government, and the government should protect your property, or at least provide a framework through which your property would be protected. A better political system in South Africa would be one in which we recognize there are different communities. And that doesn't mean that they want to kill each other or they want to wage war against each other, but they want to respect each other. They want to live in harmony. They want to learn from each other, cooperate with each other. But to pretend that those communities aren't there, it's just not working. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why South Africa isn't working today. The stereotype has shifted, or it is beginning to shift. Maybe 20 years ago, the idea of being conservative was associated with old white men, and old people who are sort of disconnected. To be cool was to be leftist. And that strangely has shifted. If you think of what it means to be leftist today, you think of people like Bernie Sanders, Tim Walsh, who was the VP candidate for Kamala Harris.
Old white men.
Yeah, that's the irony. And when you go to these international conservative conferences, it's young people.
Ernst Roets, welcome to the In HeinzSight BoldCast.
Heinz, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm happy that we could make this work.
I'm so excited that you are here, and we've been talking about having this conversation for months.
Yeah.
But you're such a busy man. You've been all over the world, all over the country, but I'm glad we can finally have a sit down. You're in Cape Town for a few things as well, another podcast and some business, and it's great to have you here. Welcome to the Cape.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here, and yes, I've had this list of things to do when I come to Cape Town, and the list just got longer and longer. And so we decided, let's come for a week and see how much of it we can do. And I'm very happy to do this.
That's great.
So yeah, thank you for having me.
No, of course. It's such a privilege. For me to talk to someone who's been on some of the biggest podcast shows in the world, it's a huge privilege. So thank you.
That's great. Yeah,
it's really cool. And I think that's the thing that I'm seeing, is that there's this... something is happening among like-minded people where, we believe similar things. We'd like to see similar positive changes take place. Hey, let's talk about it. And it's almost like the barriers, of even class and distance and all these things have come down. You spoke to Rob Hershoff.
Yep.
I was privileged to speak to him. He came all the way here. I was blown away by that. But that's the thing. The passion unites.
Yep.
And we don't even believe specifically the same things all over the place. But we have some things we agree upon and that we want to see changed. And I think that for me is positive. When I see like-minded people saying, "Hey, let's put the differences aside and let's focus on what do we agree upon."
Yeah.
Are you seeing some of that as well?
Yeah, I'm seeing that, and I think I spoke with someone in London earlier this year we spoke about this exact same thing, and that person used the word kindred spirits.
That's nice.
That we're all kindred spirits in a sense. We're aligned on certain things. And I see some form of a revival in Christianity, in the desire to preserve Western civilization, and you could say conservatism, broadly speaking. And I think partly it's because of the fact that these things are so under threat today. The world has become increasingly secular, increasingly un-Christian, and then to an extent anti-Christian. And I think a lot of people also who viewed themselves or thought of themselves as liberal over the last few decades have started to realize that the things that they really cherish and love are under threat. And a lot of it has to do with Western civilization and where they come from, their cultures, their histories, and so forth. They feel that they are being attacked for who they are. And I think a lot of people have sort of woken up to this idea that we need to preserve these things. There are some valuable things in the past. There are some valuable things in what we believe, and these things are under threat, and we need to protect that. And I think that's partly why we've seen this sort of a swing towards conservatism recently, and some form of a Christian revival, which is very exciting. But so it's this almost a dichotomy in a sense. The assault on Christianity is bigger than it has ever been, but in a sense, there's also this revival happening, and so it's interesting times that we're living in.
Well, the thing that I've noticed and that I've read about is the church has never grown as much as it would grow in a time of persecution.
Yes.
And obviously there's different kinds of persecution. We're actually seeing that now around the world, sadly, many Christians being slaughtered in Nigeria, Sudan, Mozambique, probably other places as well. And weirdly, very little focus on that from the world and the mainstream media. It's one of the biggest
atrocities in the world happening right now.
It's crazy. And I mean, someone like Amir Tsarfati looks at that and he goes, "No Jews, no news." I'm like, that's a hectic statement, but it does seem to be the case. Like there's a literal genocide happening, and now everyone's quiet. That's normally attacking someone else. But you see this attack on that level, but you also see it on the more subversive level. The cultural attack, the taking away the meaning of words. I recently spoke to Simon Brace and his wife Nell. I don't know if you know them, from Horatio Christie. They do a great talk on linguistic witchcraft. Or linguistic hijacking. Where the way that words, even marriage, even man, woman, family, how these things have been hollowed out and given new meanings because they want to take away the original intent, the original meaning. And I think that's what we're seeing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. So that is something that I feel very strongly about, is how good, you could say, Christian terms or classical Western terms have been hijacked to a large extent. And terms like, and there are so many examples, basically all these buzzwords today have started out with a good, different meaning. Something like dignity. The Afrikaans word is waardigheid, which is almost a better term for me. So waardigheid means, or dignity means, you prove your worthiness. It has to do with your behavior in the context of the community. How do you conduct yourself when you are between people? And do you act in a way that is worthy of respect and recognition? So you have dignity when you act in a dignified way.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
I thought it was the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. And today, that's not what dignity means. Dignity means it's how you feel about yourself. Dignity today has to do with your internal perceptions. And so if someone insults you, that person offends your dignity.
Wow.
And so dignity has become an individual human right where it was actually a responsibility. And the same thing with justice. Justice used to be about harmony in the community. It also used to be about when people fulfill their responsibilities towards each other, there's justice. Today, justice has become this social justice term about punishing people based on who they are. So your great-great-grandfather looked like someone who committed some atrocity, and therefore you should be punished today. And also freedom. Freedom was also, so the biblical view of freedom is, Paul, for example, in the New Testament spoke of, he was in prison and he still said that he's free. and they were beating him with whips, and he was chained up, and he said, but he's a free man because he believes in Christ.
Sure.
And freedom was, in Paul's analysis, was measured not by doing whatever you want to do. So if you lived in the fruits of the flesh, you are not a free man, you're a slave. If you do whatever you want to do, if you give in to your sinful desires, that's not a sign of freedom. That's a sign of slavery. And freedom used to be choosing not to do certain things that you might want to do, but it's not the right thing to do. And today also that has flipped. Today freedom is just do whatever you want to do. If you do whatever you want to do, you're a free man. If you smoke what you want to smoke and drink what you want to drink and whatever. If you want to be a bad father, if you want to leave your wife, if whatever, then you are free to do so. And so all of these great classical terms have been hijacked to a large extent. And it's very unfortunate, and I think we need to reclaim what these terms actually mean.
That's amazing. I think even the word liberal has been hijacked in a way, because it used to mean something quite positive from what I understand.
Yes.
And even that's been changed. And I think people who see themselves as classical liberals are even quite upset right now that, no, I'm not that kind of liberal. You're seeing a bit of that happening.
Yes. And humanist. So humanist today is something that you don't want to be a humanist. Humanism is about putting man in the place of God.
It's actually hedonism, I think. Because it leans to that. So.
And early humanism were the reformers, like Martin Luther was a humanist, and what that essentially or initially meant was that you recognize that people were created by God in God's image, and so you want to promote what is good for people as creatures that have been created by God. But that term today actually means something completely different. Today it means putting man in the place of God. There's a great paper, or actually a book on this by a philosopher in America called D.C. Schindler. I recently had an interview with him on our podcast. He spoke, I read somewhere he said that the modern liberal project is essentially, the core of it is a rejection of Christianity.
Wow.
And so I wanted to understand, why does he say that? And so I read his book, and he said that the Christian worldview is a worldview of hierarchy. There's a hierarchy of authority, and so God is on top, and then there's things like your tradition, your culture, your community. You have to behave in a certain way within the context of your community, and you as an individual are sort of at the bottom. The biblical view is that we are actually small and we're not deserving of grace and so forth, or we get grace and we don't deserve salvation, but it's through God's grace and so forth. And so the Christian worldview has always been, there's a hierarchy, and you as an individual are pretty much at the bottom of the hierarchy, and we have responsibility towards creation and so forth. And then the modern worldview has flipped that hierarchy by putting you as an individual on top. And then he explains what he means. He says, especially in terms of our relationship with reality. So the modern worldview is you as an individual can decide what reality is. So for example, if you're a Christian, that means God exists. If you're an atheist, that means that he doesn't exist.
Wow.
And so the God that you choose to worship, that God exists, and the other don't.
Imagine we're that powerful.
Wow. and that's why you get to these things of a man declaring that he's a woman, and if you don't agree with that, then
there's something wrong with you.
Exactly. And so this new thing is you can decide what reality is.
Wow.
And if people don't agree with you on what you have declared reality to be, then there's something wrong with the person that disagrees, and not with the person who has decided what reality should be.
And that's so convenient for that side, because if you can take away objective reality, and it becomes completely subjective, then you can say whatever you want. And the other person who wants to lean on objective reality, common sense and logic, no, you're wrong. But the weird thing for me is that same group of people typically would say science, you have to follow science, but that's actually anti-science to not look at objective reality. So there's all these dichotomies that you find in the narrative and in the agenda. But when they're confronted with those things, like Charlie Kirk would confront these things, they would just scream louder, you know, not be willing to admit that maybe there's something wrong with the way they think, and so it's entrenched. And what we essentially have I think what we're really talking about is it's almost like there's two huge ideologies, ways of thinking, maybe philosophies, I don't know how you would term it, that are at odds in a big way. And it's two huge sides that seems to be at loggerheads. And I think we need to figure out why that happened and how that happened and how can we walk it back?
Yeah.
And I think, like you say, one of the ways is probably, let's look at what these terms actually used to mean.
Yeah.
Maybe that's one way. What are your thoughts on
it? It's absolutely the case. And it's fascinating to see how these things have developed over time. And I think it's true that there are two broad strands, and you can describe them in different ways. There's an interesting book on this by Thomas Sowell, the economist, who's the book's called A Conflict of Visions. And so he says there are, broadly speaking, two visions of man. The one is what he calls the constrained view, and the other one is the unconstrained view. And essentially what that means is the one vision sees humankind, sees people as sinful, as
in need of a savior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other one believes that people can save themselves and people can become perfectible.
Wow.
So the one is that you cannot become sinless. You cannot become a perfect human being. You need some form of a savior. And the other one is that you can actually, if you implement the right policies and the right philosophies and ideologies, mankind can transcend itself into some godly figure. So that's the one view. The other view that I took in my studies was on how do we define freedom. And
right.
I described it also as two categories. The one is a self-centered view of freedom that says freedom is vested in yourself as an individual.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of when you do whatever you want to do, you're a free man. The other one is what I describe as a view of freedom through fulfillment. And it's something that the main reason I took that word was I read and it links to your point about Christianity and the suffering and the persecution, is there's a wonderful book it's actually the first book about the history of the church by Eusebius of Caesarea. Yeah. I think it's called The Church History, the Afrikaans, or the English translation thereof. It's originally in Latin, I believe. And it's largely about the Christians after Christ, the persecution and how the church became the church.
Yeah, the early church.
Yeah. Wow. And what struck me about that book, I listened to it on audiobook, and then I actually ordered it on Amazon and I read it, but I read a different translation than the one I listened to, which was even better. So the one I listened to, he kept using the word fulfillment. And that word really stuck with me, but he used it in a strange way. I want to count. It must have been 80 or 90 times he used that word throughout the book. And he would say things like, the Christians were sent into the arena and there were lions there to devour them, and through their devouring they reached fulfillment.
Whoa.
Or he would say that this person was a Christian and he refused to reject Christ, and he was then beheaded, and in his beheading he found fulfillment.
So in martyrdom,
exactly,
there's fulfillment.
Yeah, and it's the idea of recognizing that there is something out there that is bigger than you.
Wow.
And you find your fulfillment, and that's sort of the ultimate way to die also, but the ultimate sacrifice is to sacrifice yourself for something that is bigger than yourself.
Wow.
And that's a form of fulfillment. And so that's why I love the word fulfillment, or vervulling in Afrikaans, to say that you find fulfillment in, you find meaning for yourself as an individual in doing something, in contributing to something that is bigger than you.
Yeah, wow.
And that to me, and there are so many examples, like the old cathedrals that the Christian built. They started building them knowing that they're not going to see the end product. Their children aren't going to see the end product. It's going to take several generations.
Sure.
But in doing the groundwork, in building, helping with the construction of the walls or whatever, you find fulfillment, even though you're not going to see
greater.
Yeah, it's bigger than yourself.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that's so good. And I think of Paul that writes, "I've been poured out as a drink offering." You know, there's that. It's the giving of all, everything that you've, and it's such a beautiful exchange. You know, God has given us life. God has given us everything we have, And what are we to do with that? We are to give it back, to his purposes.
Yes.
So I think that makes sense. And from the ultimate, giving of your life, that's like not many of us in the Western world, I think, will see that level of persecution. But there's other forms of that where, what do you stand for? What do you boldly proclaim, no matter what others may say? Because you and I have had a taste of another kind of persecution. Character assassination. Verbal abuse online, all these kinds of things. You've had
it the last few days. I saw some of it.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see what people think and why they think it. And by God's grace, I'm at the place where I go, I'd actually like to have a conversation with you and see how you got to these, things that you say, because you obviously don't know me, but you think you do. So how did you get to these conclusions?
They want to present you as something that you aren't.
Yeah. And it's that's kind of the modern day Western version of being attacked for what you believe in. You have to stop, otherwise I'm going to call your names, and if you don't, then and I'm going, what?
my favorite version of that was a tweet someone sent me this year. I thought it was so funny. We had actually, after Charlie Kirk died, I made a video about people online encouraging violence and murder and celebrating the fact that he was killed, and then saying we need to do more of this. It's really, really alarming and concerning.
So dark, yeah.
And then I said, I made a video about that, and then someone replied and said, I hope when you do this, you break the law, so that when you break the law, you will be punished by the law. And so I said to this person, so I haven't broken the law, so I don't deserve punishment, but you wish for me to break the law so that I get the punishment that I would deserve once I've broken the law, but I haven't done it yet. So
it just doesn't make sense.
It's crazy. So the person wants you to be as bad as they think you are, so that you can get what they think you deserve, even though you aren't the person they would like you to be.
But, I mean, one of the things that you must see glaringly obvious as well is how the gaslighting of the mainstream media that we see much of in America has really taken hold here as well.
Yeah.
I see you often have battles on Twitter or X with some of our friends in the mainstream media about how they frame things, how they put things out. This whole thing about a delegation of Afrikaners to America, and now there's this. I see there's all these back and forth, and man, it's just. What is your assessment of this specific situation going on now?
Yeah.
Like, who's really representing the Afrikaner and how and that? But I mean, on the one hand, my point was really about how people are influenced by the mainstream media. I can hear it in the way they speak. I can hear it in the way that they talk. And I think it's really important for us to realize that these things do influence the way people think.
Yeah.
I can hear in someone's comment who they've been listening to.
Yeah, you can hear that.
And who they have not been listening to.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can sit here and go, we've not been influenced. We obviously have by who we listen to. But I do like to think that I go, I've got a base, which is the Bible, the Word of God. Mm-hmm. And I measure what I hear and what is taught and what is shared by that. And if it lines up, and it consistently lines up from a source, then I feel I can trust this source, So if they also, so that for me is a good base to work from. Yep. But it feels to me like other people just want to hate. They just want to get upset with anything that's different than. And even within the conservative world, people don't agree on everything. And you see that. But anyway, I want to get back to the question I had about what's happening right now with the Afrikaans thing, because that's an example for me about two worldviews clashing.
Yep.
And, what is your assessment of that situation? That's really my question.
So, I think there's two things to be said about that. One is there's this controversy at the moment about this open letter that was published a few days ago by 40 Afrikaners, in which they say they reject the narrative that Afrikaners are being targeted in South Africa. And they especially reject Trump and what the American government is doing. And they reject organizations like AfriForum and Solidarity. And there's a whole bunch of things that they reject.
Do they give reasons why they reject it?
Yes, not so much in the letter, but they wrote a bunch of opinion pieces, which I went through the effort of reading all of them, the ones I could find at least. And so their view is more or less that Afrikaners in South Africa are on average wealthier than the average person in South Africa. And the Afrikaners have done horrible things in the past. And so we need to apologize for that, and we need to correct historic injustices. And we have no reason to complain about what's going on today if we still have all the money. That's basically the line. And then if you
do we call that white guilt? What do we call that?
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And then if you read the list of the 40 people, almost all of them are academics. It's professors at universities, and then some of them are journalists. And I mean, they obviously have the right to that view. I do think it's a very dangerous view because, I've to mention a name, I read the piece that Pierre de Vos wrote, the professor at the University of Cape Town, in News 24. He explained this, and then he makes an interesting point. He says something that I've also said before about the risks or the difficulty of democracy in a diverse country like South Africa. So there's proper research on that has pointed to the fact that democracy tends to work in a country that is largely homogenous, when it's one community with one culture, one language, democracy, and when they are fairly wealthy, like in Sweden or something like that. Democracy tends to work well.
Yeah, because most people have a lot in common.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But once you deal with a country like South Africa that is so diverse, democracy tends to lead to friction. And even more when you deal with a country that is economically diverse, with a lot of people who are unemployed and poor, and then you have people who are wealthy. And so these two things, both of them are in South Africa. And so that is partly why we say it's not to say that we are anti-democracy, but to say at least that this one big centralized project isn't working. But his view on that, he uses the same research to reach a different conclusion. And so his conclusion is, all of these things are true, it's not working, and therefore we need to point fingers to the haves and not the have-nots. So the problem is those people who have all the money, basically they should share what they have, and if they don't cooperate, then they are the problem. And
How
I don't
does
know.
that make sense?
I don't know if he realizes that was exactly the argument that the Nazis used against the Jews. That these Jews, they're a minority. They have more jobs. They have less unemployment, and so
they own more businesses.
They own more businesses, and so they are the problem. And they should cooperate by doing what we say they should do. And that was also the argument before the Rwandan genocide, when the Tutsis were targeted.
Yeah.
Many of the people who were involved with that said, well, those Tutsis have less unemployment, they are wealthier than the average person in Rwanda. And it led to a literal slaughtering. And it happened in Armenia. And there are so many cases just in the last century where a minority was targeted, not because they are poor, but because they are on average wealthier than the average. And
but then also in the same breath where that's the argument, isn't every case that you just mentioned also marked by the fact that there was a dehumanizing campaign?
Yes.
So you've got all the money, you've got everything, but you're actually less than human. So
you are cockroaches or rats.
It'll be good to kill you.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening as well.
It's cleaning out the filth.
It's happening to the people in Israel, and it's definitely happening here. I mean, you shone a light on what's being taught at a university about hating white people and Afrikaans people and calling them less than human.
Yep.
So that when someone actually goes into action and kills a white person, they don't feel like they killed a human.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yes. So there's
that's hectic.
It's a theory. I got into trouble for saying this, although the people who were angry at me didn't say that it's not true. They just didn't want me to say it.
Why did you say that? Because it's out there and it's true.
And so it really is a thing. It's taught at universities in South Africa, but it seems that it originated at the University of Pretoria at the Faculty of Law.
Hectic.
With some very senior professors, not junior professors, who started writing these articles which have become known as Zania critical theory. And essentially what it boils down to is saying that the argument is more or less that Ubuntu is the essence of being a human being. And Ubuntu basically means it's brotherliness, it's caring for your neighbors and caring for people around you. So the essence of being human is having Ubuntu. And then the argument goes further and says, but white people don't have Ubuntu. They aren't capable of possessing Ubuntu, which means they aren't human, which means by implication that if you commit crime against them, your victim is not a human being. And so it goes down that whole... And so,
my goodness.
And so, if you kill a white person, you're not committing murder. That's the consequence of this theory.
It's the end goal.
And it's actually taught at universities. And I'm not saying it's a popular view. I'm not saying everyone in the country believes that. It's a minority view. But the fact that senior professors write papers about this, publish papers about this, teach this at universities is particularly alarming.
But we've seen that this is how it happens. You know, the universities are captured over a long period of time. Then they start raising up activists, and then those activists go out into the real world and they start spewing what they've learned, like it's the truth. And eventually it shifts culture. And this was a planned thing. And I've had Simon Brace on this program where he lays it out. It started back with Marx, and everyone that's built on that has the same end goal. Goal, and that is to, say that, listen, there's the haves and the have-nots. There's the oppressors and those who are being oppressed. And basically, if you're white, Christian, and male, you're the main oppressor. And
you are by definition the problem.
And in our country, you can add Afrikaans.
Yes.
You're the problem. And everyone else is the victim.
Yes.
And so this thing is being played out in many different ways. The feminism movement uses it. All these things are using it. And it's the fruit of all these ideologies, ways of thinking. It starts with an idea that someone writes down, like these guys. And then it starts being taught. Then it starts being, initially it's like there's pushback, and then there's some adoption. Pushback, adoption. And then if this is not stopped, it can become a thing in 10, 15 years from now.
And the problem is there are examples of where it has become a thing.
Which is horrible because ideas have consequences. And that's where ideologies are so powerful. And I know you see that on a daily basis.
So I got in trouble in 2018 when I did a video in response to a professor who made a whole Twitter thread about farm murders, and she spoke about why people should stop complaining because it's not that bad and so forth. And I quoted Victor Klemperer, and I explained the quote, but people were not interested in my explanation. But Victor Klemperer was a Jew who was in a Nazi concentration camp. He survived the camps, but he had a diary. He started before the war. He started writing diary like every day or every second day, what happened during the day, and he did that throughout the war, and even after the war. And so after the war, in his diary, he makes this remark. Now remember the context, like his family was exterminated, everyone he knew died, and he was sort of this lone survivor to a large extent. And he wrote, if he could turn back time, and if he could turn the tables around, in other words, if he was in control, what would he do? And the people who did these horrible things, if he had power over them, he said, he wrote in his diary, I think I would let many of the leaders, I would let many of the followers go, and perhaps some of the leaders, I would let them go as well. But then he said, but I would string up the academics 6 feet higher than the rest. And what he meant by that, of course, was when I quoted that, people said, okay, so I'm saying we need to go out and kill academics, which obviously I didn't say. But the point of the quote was that he said that the real problem is you have these crazy extremists, but then you have university professors who are disconnected from reality on ground level. They are disconnected from their communities. They are sort of stuck in this theoretical frame of reference, and they then give intellectual basis for this type of thing. So you have these racists chanting "kill the Boer" and so forth, and then you have a university, a professor of law giving sort of intellectual context as to why white people aren't human beings and so forth. And it really is the case. And there are great academics and there are great professors, but unfortunately, over the last few centuries, and especially the last century, I think some of the biggest atrocities could largely be blamed on very, very reckless work done by academics.
Wow. Unfortunately, that's so true. And it's a scary thing because, I mean, I have young children, you have young children. We're like, okay, we'd like for them to have a tertiary education that's proper. Where do we send them? Because I think there's a chance that if you raised your children well and they go to a tertiary education where these ideologies are, thrown at them as indoctrination, they might survive and come out okay on the other side. But it's a gamble. They might be radicalized to a whole other level, and which we've seen over and over again.
Now in America with Charlie Kirk.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the prime example.
Yeah.
And what do we do about that? Some people are creating new universities, new schools, private, owned, so we can push that. But a lot of our universities started out with a Christian worldview. Yeah. It started out as theological schools. And now it's completely been captured by a whole other way of thinking. And it's sad, But, can we return? Yeah. Do we start something new? What do you think?
It started largely with secularization, saying that, this used to be a Christian school or a Christian university, but, we're modern now, we are more liberal, so we're going to take the Christianity out. We're now more secular. And then it goes down a particular path, and eventually it becomes very destructive.
Sure. And it normally just takes one person to complain. I don't want to read the Bible anymore, or I don't want the 10 Commandments to be up on the walls.
It's offensive to me. Yes.
And then they go, oh, we can't offend anyone. And then they...
Yeah, that's exactly.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. That's also how they're closing down the Afrikaans schools. Someone would be admitted to the school who would then say, but actually, I demand to receive education in English. I think this is a human rights violation. There are English schools, but you go to an Afrikaans school and then you demand to be taught in English.
It's so silly. It's not necessary. We don't recognize that here. So go to another school or read what we say about our admission. This is who we are. You can't change that. But then the problem is that as soon as someone caves, it sets a precedent.
Yep.
And then we see people cave. Yep. Why? Because apparently, and I'll just say it, feelings have become way too important.
Yeah.
People's hurt feelings. And we can't build a nation on hurt feelings.
Yeah.
We have to build it on healthy principles. And people who have hurt feelings need help, but not that kind of help.
Yeah.
You don't when a toddler throws a tantrum, you don't give them what they want.
Yeah.
Because then they go, oh, every time I throw a tantrum, I'll get what I want.
Yeah, you incentivize it.
Any decent parent knows this. So why do we do that with adults who should know better,
and it's on a more political level. It's in South Africa, if you protest peacefully, you don't really get what you want. But if you set something on fire, if you burn down a library or a school bus or something, then the government gives you what you want. And so then the protesters or the potential protesters learn, okay, so that's the way to get what you want, is you need to commit violence and you need to commit arson.
That's so scary.
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, that's what we've seen. That's the pattern.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And we see it here often on the N2 to Cape Town, burning tires on the N2, messing up the road, making it dangerous, throwing bricks from bridges onto cars.
Yeah.
Why? No, we're not happy with service delivery.
Yeah.
You're stealing electricity, and everything around that you've built is a health risk.
Yes.
But you want service delivery. It doesn't make sense. But it's typically someone who's paying someone to do it. It's not even really an issue. They're just causing upsets,
Yeah.
But it's sad to see that. But once again, I think, well, let me ask you, what do you think's at the heart of the issues that we face right now in South Africa, and what needs to take place for that to shift?
So I think I want to answer with reference to the discussion we had earlier about the two worldviews. And another way to explain the two worldviews is the analysis of the French Revolution. So some people say that's where the difference between left and right started, was the debate between Edmund Burke and Thomas Paine. And so Burke is generally known as the father of conservatism today because he had a conservative view of the French Revolution, and Paine had a more, I don't know if liberal is the right word, but a more sort of modern view, modern ideological view. And the core difference, according to Burke, a lot of people were very excited about the French Revolution because it's an overthrow of the monarchy. They literally killed the king and the queen, and now under the pretense that the country is now going to be a free country. And Burke was very concerned about this whole idea of revolution to lead to more prosperity. And he said the main difference here is two views of what would lead to a better life. And the view of the revolutionaries was that they, and Thomas Paine, he's his opponent in this debate, was that we have a theory on what would constitute a better world, and we need to implement this theory. It's an ideology. So it's a theoretical frame of reference and we need to apply that. And he said, no, the appropriate way is not to find a good theory, it's to let experience in the real world lead you. So he said basically the difference is between those who prefer to implement theories as opposed to those who want to learn from reality.
That's almost coming back to academics coming up with ideas versus what works in the real world.
That's absolutely it. Yes.
Yeah.
And so socialism, it sounds, if you read the theory, it sounds good. So the line that Marx used was that everyone should work according to their ability and everyone should receive according to their need. And if you read that, you think, maybe that's a good idea. That sounds like a good theory. But then if you implement that in practice, that's when you get Zimbabwe and Venezuela and the Soviet Union and communist China. And so you can have a wonderful theory, but the question is, does it work in the real world? And so the conservative view, according to Burke, was let reality guide you as opposed to theory. And theories, you need theories, but the theories should comply with reality. And what's happening today is people want reality to comply with their theories. They want to force reality into their theory.
Wow.
And instead of forcing their theory into reality or changing their theory so that it's more realistic.
That actually, in a way, also explains the move away from objective reality.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
It seems to have had its origin there, like what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that explains why academics are some academics at least, are to such an extent part of the problem, because they have these theories that are unrealistic, and especially economic theories, but also theories about, sociological theories and how should a society be constructed. And if you read it, it sounds great, but then if you implement it, it leads to chaos and it leads to warfare and it leads to hatred and all of these things.
And I mean, we do have very harsh realities in South Africa that we do need to face.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like the approach of white Afrikaans people feeling guilty in perpetuity, making restoration in perpetuity, while there's an entitled youth being raised on you deserve, without hard work, without putting in the miles. That is unsustainable. It's already shown that it's unsustainable. Entitlement is never a healthy thing. So I think we sit with harsh realities from our broken past, which has to be acknowledged, but dealt with in a healthier way. What is that? And we have competing ideologies.
Yeah.
You have, let's face it, we have African culture, which is a way of thinking, that we will probably never truly understand. But our nation has very much been influenced by Europe,
absolutely,
Britain,
Western ideas,
and now American ideas. So we're a weird melting pot of world cultures.
Yes.
And I think maybe at the core, if I can put it to you, we have an identity crisis.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely.
So how do we deal with that, do you think?
I think it's because there are two extremes on the identity discussion. And I think the solution, I would argue, is sort of a balance. The one extreme is that South Africa is a country that exists of different race groups. It's white people and black people and colored people and Indian people, and they are all pretty much alike within. So white people are sort of one category, and then the coloreds are one category, and so forth. And then, of course, the narrative with that is that these people are just on the brink of a war. I once asked ChatGPT how many prominent people in South Africa have warned that South Africa is on the verge of a race war. And it gave me like 20 names.
Whoa.
And I said, are there more? And it said yes. And it gave me 20 more names. So everyone is sort of warning that there's going to be a war tomorrow.
Civil war, yeah.
And then the other extreme, which I think is also wrong, is to pretend that there are no differences. That we're all just humans and that all humans are alike. As if we don't speak different languages, we don't have some people pay lobola when they get married, and that's not wrong, it's just not what others do. And
I think there's a difference between we all have value,
yeah, absolutely,
but we don't all are the same.
Yeah.
And that needs to be recognized.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
I think culture is a natural consequence of human nature. Is people naturally organize in communities, and within the context of a community, they develop their own language, they write their own literature, they develop their own culture. It's a natural thing. And so the I would say the balance between it's just racist and the other extreme as we're just individuals and nothing else is that it's a country with different cultures.
Yeah.
And the solution is not to try to wage war on those cultures. That again is the theory versus reality.
Yeah.
It's to recognize reality. Reality is that people speak different languages. They have different views on economics. They have different views on what the state should do and what the state shouldn't do. Different cultural preferences. And that's just normal. It's not a bad thing. And to recognize that. And so that is why we at Lex Libertas, our argument is we need a much more decentralized system. So
what does that mean? For those who don't know, what does a decentralized government look like? And practically, what does that look like on a regional level?
Yes. So when we say we need a more decentralized system, there's two ways of putting it. The one is we need a more decentralized system, and the other one is to say we need more autonomy or more self-governance. And what that means is, in terms of the problem, that currently you could read the South African Constitution and say, well, this looks like a good constitution, but then you can see what's happening in reality. And in reality, the country is this government is highly centralized. It's governed not even from the union buildings, it's governed from Lutuli House. The country is governed from the ANC headquarters. That's where the real power is.
I thought we had a GNU.
Yeah, again, in theory. But it's not just highly centralized. It's race nationalist and it's socialist. And the government is significantly detached from realities on ground level, and it also it governs in a way that is firstly irresponsible, but secondly, when they do that, there are no consequences for them because there's no accountability. And so the only solution. So I think the president knows who the corrupt politicians are. But the problem is this: it's not incentivized for him to act, because if he were to prosecute them, it's going to be the end of his career. His party is going to kick him out. If he wants to remain president, he must ensure that the corrupt politicians are not prosecuted. And if he does that, he's going to get kicked out.
So the sort of troostprijs is all these commissions that he started that doesn't lead anywhere.
It's just kicking
like
for the
34
sideline.
34 commissions.
Yeah, 34
more.
commissions.
That's
more
led
even
to
now.
nothing.
I think there were, since we counted 34, there were 2 more additional ones. So I think it's at least at 36.
Does our government care about its people? I don't think you can say that.
No, I don't think. They would make these speeches,
but
but
in practice, it doesn't seem that way.
So and there are examples. So if you read the preamble and the objectives to the BEE laws, for example, it says the purpose of BEE is to promote equality and to enable to provide black people in South Africa with opportunities to enter the labor market. As a result of these laws, ironically, poverty and unemployment has increased, especially among black South Africans, and inequality has increased. South Africa is more unequal now than it was when the ANC took over.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's again because the theory versus the experience, the reality. So in theory, there's a particular theory behind these laws which says if we implement these laws, we're gonna reach a more equal society. but it doesn't speak to reality.
Is it true that there are 145 race-based laws?
Yeah.
Because some people are attacking that statement.
Yes. So it's a project by the Institute of Race Relations. Martin van Staden is the editor of that. And race law is basically a law that categorizes people according to skin color and then dictates that people have to be treated accordingly. So your skin color determines the way you would be treated. And
are they categories or just two categories, like black and white, or is it? Are there levels? Because if there are levels, then that's very apartheid, actually.
Yeah, it depends, but they would say the word black includes Africans, coloreds, and Indians. Okay. So then they would say black and white.
Yeah. All right.
But there are more than 140.
So it actively discriminates between against white people. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Sure.
So, but it would be framed in flowery language.
Yes.
The law doesn't say, we hate white people, we need to push them out. The law would say things like, we're implementing this law to alleviate black poverty. But the law doesn't do that. The law worsens, black poverty is worsened as a result of these laws. That's the weird irony.
Because what I see practically are hardworking people that really want to make a success of a business, who now have 100 loops to jump through, have to partner with people they hope will not, stab them in the back, because they have to have a certain BEE status. And then they work double as hard for half as much money if they are successful. And then, there's someone who has signatory rights but doesn't work, takes a salary home. It doesn't seem fair, you know? And it's perpetuating. And even as I'm saying this, I know someone will say, now you're being racist. But it's not. Let's take race out of this thing. They've made it a race thing. It doesn't have to be a race thing. It should. I mean, why can't we be a meritocracy? Why can't we, I think the better way, maybe you must tell me what you think the better way is, but isn't the better way to focus on raising up people in a way that they are better educated, better trained, so that they stand a better chance of getting the job, than
focusing
just
on
giving
education.
people a job that they... Because I've spoken to friends that are black, colored, whatever. They hate the fact that someone think they didn't deserve their job. Especially if they've worked hard to get there. And many of them have.
Yep.
But then the general consensus is, oh, you got the job because.
Yep.
And
exactly.
so even it's negative both ways. The ones that are discriminated against are suffering, and the ones who get work, I mean, unless they're like, not right in the head and they kind of just ride the wave, most people want to feel productive. Like you said, they want to be part of something bigger. But that's missing. That seems to be, for me, like something we should recognize and try to remedy. Would you agree?
No, absolutely. And so part of the problem is that the education system in the country is a disaster. And so I've heard the people who defend these race laws say, oh, that's a grift. You want to talk about race laws and then you shift to education, but you can't detach the two.
You can't. It's completely related.
Yeah. So practically, and it's especially true, and there's been some studies about that, and you can just observe it if you drive around in South Africa. Schools that are predominantly what people describe as white schools, even though the question is there really such a thing, but tend to perform better. And schools, especially in townships, are some of the worst performing schools, not just in the country, but in the world. So it's staggering, the statistics on just how bad education is in South Africa. And so a consequence of that, of these schools that are so dependent on the government, that are dysfunctional as a result of government, not as a result of white oppression or something like that, those children who are predominantly black children don't have the same opportunities because they're not qualified. They can't read. They're up to grade 7 and they can't properly read, or they can't do maths. And sometimes the teachers can't do maths. There's been studies about that, just how many teachers in these schools teach mathematics, but they don't understand maths themselves. And
my goodness.
But the problem then is you have a skewed pool of people to choose from. So hypothetically, you have to appoint someone for a particular job, but the pool of people who are qualified for that job is arguably 60% white, 40% black. But then the law says that it has to be, the people you appoint has to be 80% black. So it's not even representative, because if they truly wanted to be representative, they would have to fix the education system. But there's no, they would make speeches about education is important and so forth. But it's such a shame. It's probably the most atrocious thing about South Africa today is just the disastrous state of the education system and schools, and the way in which young people, and especially young black children, are deprived of opportunities just by getting horrible education. And it's government-sponsored education, and the government turns a blind eye when these things have to be addressed.
Sure. And I mean, I see that even in my kids' schools. They go to public schools, but the public school has to do so much fundraising to actually employ more teachers out of their own pocket, to have enough teachers that are qualified and know what they're doing, so that the children can have a good education. Yes. Because it doesn't just come from the government. On the contrary. So there's all these extra things that you're almost running it like a semi-private school. And then people look at that and will even criticize that. But those people are working hard to make that happen so that kids get a better education. It's not falling out of the sky. It's hard work, focus, and making a plan. Because we're not getting it from the government, so it has to come from somewhere.
And community involvement. It's one of the key factors to a successful school is the community being involved.
Exactly.
With fundraisers, and the community also holding the school accountable. So if the headmaster isn't doing a proper job, the parents come in and make sure that the headmaster is, there's accountability.
And it actually comes back to your point about, self-governance. Because that's actually what's happening. At a healthy or a fairly healthy school, that's what's happening. There's community self-governance. We can't wait for someone from the government to come and take care of. Actually, they try to avoid this as much as possible, because I know from sitting in meetings, there's the stuff that the DBE wants. The school, it's not good for the school. A lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it. And they actually want to try and avoid and get around it in some way, and just do school well. The government's actually making it harder for them. So it's so frustrating, and it doesn't have to be that way. But now you get this double thing where, it's a white school, it's a privileged school, but what? It's not the way you should look at it. People are working hard to make, and it's not just white schools. I know of schools that in colored communities here in Cape Town where the same thing happens. It's because the parents are pulling in and making a difference. And you can see that anywhere, if people are willing to put in the work and the focus. So, I'm getting worked up about it.
But that's a very good example of the point about autonomy. So that's a form of what you could call de facto autonomy. In other words, it's just autonomy on local level in real life. Regardless of what the government policy says, people are becoming involved with the schools, and that a consequence of that is that the school is a better functioning school. The outcomes are better. And so when we say that the system is too centralized, it needs to be decentralized. A significant part of the solution is that people should just fill the void, because there's this political vacuum in South Africa with the government just largely through incompetence and largely through not fulfilling what they're supposed to be doing, or skewed priorities, apathy, these things. And so there are a lot of things where the government is supposed to be, but they aren't there. And the government is in a lot of places where they aren't supposed to be. And
overreach,
yes.
Not doing the basics, but overreaching in other areas.
Not keeping people safe, but trying to micromanage how you run your business, for example.
What should a government do? I mean, let's just look at the main 5 things. What should a government do?
The classical view is life, liberty, and property. The government should protect your life. You should be safe. The government should protect your freedom. Or the government shouldn't be the guardian of your freedom, but the government should provide a framework in which you have a significant degree of freedom, and you can, for example, start businesses, you can appoint people. You're not over-regulated by the government, and the government should protect your property, or at least provide a framework through which your property would be protected. And so I think that's sort of the view that developed through the Enlightenment, that life, liberty, and property. And I think the more classical view, if you go to the ancient Greeks, and which I prefer, that's my preference, and of course the Bible and the Romans, the view
You're
was that
referring to Aristotle, Plato,
yes,
those,
exactly,
yeah,
and
early
Cicero
thinkers.
in Rome. Yes. So the old view was that the community should pursue what is good, and of course through the Bible we learn what is good. But there must be a. It's not the people here and the government there. It's a balance between the two, and the two are intertwined. And people should be able to pursue what is good without the government preventing them from doing that. And that requires certain things. It requires certain conditions. It requires some form of a communal agreement on what is good in the first place.
To this community.
Yeah, exactly.
What do we have in common?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is a natural thing. Again, that naturally comes to the fore if a community has freedom.
Yeah.
If the community isn't an evil community that believes that, because that's sort of the counter argument that was used during the Enlightenment. But what if the community believes cannibalism is a good thing? And but it's sort of extreme theoretical mind games, but it's not reality.
But it also comes back to what do you define as good, and what do you use as a source for good?
That's the point.
So that's again back to philosophy. How do you what feeds the way you think? Because I mean, we see it every day. When someone has already decided what they believe, they will force facts into their worldview.
Yes.
So that's why you can have the same person look at, like you said earlier, you and this other professor looked at the same facts, came to different conclusions.
Yeah, exactly.
Why? Because your worldviews differ.
Yeah.
Same thing with the whole creation versus evolution thing. The same scientists look at the same evidence. Scientists on both sides look at the same evidence of looking at the fossil record and come to different conclusions. Why? Because the one believes the Bible and the other believes there's no God.
Yeah.
And you will then come.
Yeah.
So science doesn't tell us anything. Scientists tell us many things.
Yeah.
But they all have ideologies that they come from.
They filter it. Yeah.
And I think it's similar to politics.
Yeah.
The way that our world looks is because people are forcing things into reality that it doesn't even make sense, but theoretically they're like, it has to work, so now let's force it into and make it work. And but it's not working. I mean, as many people have said, I think you've said it as well, the ANC, Rob Hershoff says a lot, the ANC has had 31 years or 32 years to prove themselves, and they have failed by all accounts. So what do we do with that? How do we turn that around?
Yeah.
And on that note, I want to ask you something that I came up earlier in my mind. Something that Charlie Kirk and many others have said that actually makes a lot of sense to me. And I didn't know this, to be honest, that there's a difference between a democracy and a republic.
Yeah.
And that a republic actually makes more sense. Because a democracy, you can get, like my Afrikaans high school teacher said, all fools on the same side. And not doing anything that's good in the long run. But a republic is different. Do you see it as two different things? So, and what do you think is better?
Yeah, I want to just say something about the earlier point.
Sorry, I talked a lot now.
And then I want to say something about the republic idea. So C.S. Lewis writes about this in Mere Christianity, and I thought that's fantastic. This thing of good and evil and a Christian worldview as opposed to a non-Christian worldview. And he talks about the law of nature. And then he says, the argument you sometimes hear is, you don't need to be a Christian to know that murder is wrong. And so that's sort of an argument against Christianity. And then he says in his worldview, that is an argument for Christianity, because it just says that mankind was created in a particular way. There's a certain frame of reference that is built into our DNA, built into who we are. We instinctively know that some things are right and some things are wrong. Some things are evil and some things are good. And we're instinctively in search of finding the good. And we instinctively try to prevent bad things from happening. Yeah. And that to him is just an argument for creation and the fact that people were created in a particular way. Yeah. And you can find the context of that in the Bible. So on the question of democracy and republicanism, it's interesting how especially more conservative Americans would be quick to say that America is in the first place a republic and not a democracy. And so I'm very much in favor of democracy, but depends on what you mean when you say democracy. Because obviously it's not working in South Africa. So if you mean by democracy a process through which citizens participate and have a say in who represents them, that's a good thing. But the republic idea is to say that the focus is on what should the system look like, and is it a system that recognizes the people as a unique people, and a system that provides a framework through which people can be free. So you can combine the two. You can have a republic with a democratic system.
Which is technically what we have, isn't it? Because we are the Republic of South Africa, and we have a democratic system.
So in theory, yes. But I think the problem here is...
You're saying that a lot today. In theory.
In theory, yes. But the problem is the idea behind the South African Republic and the way it's being implemented is this notion that it sort of jumps from different race groups on the verge of a war to we're all just the same. And it doesn't really recognize communal dynamics. And I think if we had a system that has a better recognition of communal dynamics, of cultural dynamics, of saying that if you are Afrikaans and you want your children to go to an Afrikaans school, that is not some evil objective that you wish to pursue. Yeah. It's a natural thing and it's a good thing. And to prevent people from doing that, as the government is trying to do, is very, I would say, undemocratic, and it's very un-Republican. And so the Republican ideal is to say that this is something that is important to our community, and we want the freedom to protect these things that are important to us. And I think Afrikaners have always been very Republican, and we've established all these Boer republics.
Yeah.
And I think the Republican spirit is largely a pursuit to freedom.
Yeah.
And you can combine that with democracy in a sense, but it's not quite synonymous.
Okay, let's get back to the word freedom that you did a thesis on and is very close to your heart. Expand a bit more on that. What does it mean? Because I think in a way, that's what we're talking about. What does a truly free, democratic South Africa look like? And so, but in order to define that, we have to know what freedom in its essence should mean, or always meant, and has changed, I guess, in a way. But what's the original meaning?
Yeah, so it's somewhat of a joke, and it's obviously oversimplified. But I sometimes say that the answer to every philosophical question is the same, and it is the answer is the movement from potentiality to actuality. And so that was Aristotle's one of the big sort of main themes. He said everything on earth, everything in creation, everything that exists is somewhere in the movement from potentiality to actuality. And so he uses examples like a tree. A tree has potential to do something. It could go in different directions. You can chop off the tree and you can make wood, and then it's a movement from potentiality to actuality. Then you can use the wood to make a chair. Yeah. And that's another process. Okay. So the point is everything is in movement. That's what it boils down.
Okay.
Everything is moving from what it is to what it could potentially be.
Yeah.
And that's the same for people. People are always in movement, not just physically, but growing. So everyone has some form of potentiality, and everyone wants to achieve that actuality at some point. And so a system and I think, let me just say, I think that's sort of the core of the meaning of freedom. I think that's what it always has been. Is freedom has always been the movement from potentiality to actuality. And if we say that actuality is fulfillment, or achieving what is good, or achieving your potential, or living out your calling, that is actuality. That's your destination that you need to get to, what you were created for.
Yeah.
And so you are free if you are not prevented from doing that. If you are on the movement from who you are now to what you could potentially be.
Oh, that's good.
That's freedom. But freedom is
free to walk your road to fulfillment.
Yes, exactly. Okay. But it's not just you
unhindered.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not just you as an individual. It's also you as a community. Because a community has a particular view, and people cannot just live in isolation. People live as communities. So if you detach your individual view of freedom from the communal view of freedom, you get to the point where the individual starts waging war on the community, and you say the Afrikaans school has to be shut down because of the individual that doesn't understand Afrikaans. So you have to bring in the community dynamic.
Yeah.
And so it's a balance. And the Greeks initially said that it's not really a choice between, is it freedom for the individual or is it freedom for the community? Because the two are intertwined. You cannot, as an individual, be free if your community isn't free. And you cannot be free as a community if the individuals that are part of that community aren't free.
Wow.
And so to bring that to our situation, your community cannot be free if the people in that community cannot, for example, have the freedom to start their own businesses, to appoint people, to speak their language, to live in the way that they prefer, in pursuit of what is good, of course. But the individual cannot be free if the community isn't free. If the community doesn't have, again, the example we use now was schools. If the community cannot have schools, then you can never be free within that context. If you cannot cooperate, if there's not trust within the context of the community, you as an individual cannot achieve much. And so I think the modern notion, not so much also in South Africa was influenced by that, but after the Second World War, the modern notion became very much individualistic, focused on the individual, and the idea of the community was sort of seen as a bad thing. And so you mentioned this, if today you are an Afrikaner, that is, people are skeptical of that. If you say, I like my culture, that's sort of a bad thing. It's because the world has become so fixated on the individual that the community must be a bad thing. And I think a better political system in South Africa would be one in which we recognize there are different communities.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they want to kill each other or they want to wage war against each other, but they want to respect each other. They want to live in harmony. They want to learn from each other, cooperate with each other. But to pretend that those communities aren't there, it's just not working. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why South Africa isn't working today, is there's this ongoing friction, because it's not just affecting white communities. I just had a podcast recently with someone from the Eastern Cape who's a member of a royal family in one of those traditional communities, who feel that their community is completely rejected by the South African government. They're not recognized for their culture.
Wow.
Their traditional leaders aren't respected. And so I think that's one of the most important parts of the solution, is getting back to a point where we recognize it's a country that exists of different communities. You could say different nations, not just one big nation. Yeah. Different nations within South Africa. And these nations have different cultures, and we respect that. And on that basis, we can encourage respect, and we can cooperate.
When you make this point, I'm assuming that some people would immediately say, "Oh, you just want apartheid again."
Yep.
So what do you say to that criticism?
So we get that, but I think there are a few things to be said about that. One is the idea that communities should have autonomy over their own affairs is as old as humankind. So if the idea that a community should have autonomy is apartheid, that means every nation on earth has implemented that, from the early Greeks, the early Christians, the early Romans, because the Romans said we are Romans, we have a particular meaning to what it means to be a Roman. And the same for the Greeks. They had the polis, and they even went as far as Athens has a particular community or a particular culture, and the Corinthians have a particular culture, and so forth. So that if that is apartheid, then everything is apartheid.
Oh, yeah.
The other argument that is, I think, more practical is there's a significant correlation between the system we have today and the apartheid system. And that is that the apartheid system and the current system were highly centralized, and they were race-based systems. And our argument is actually to step away from that.
Yeah.
So it is not to say we should return from this system to the previous system. It is to say that the faults that are embedded in the current system were also the same problems that were embedded in the previous system. That what led to the failure of the apartheid system is also leading to the failure of the current system.
So government overreach every time is apparently not a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. It's government overreach, and it's government overreach on the basis of race, especially.
Yeah.
And so our point is not to move back, but to move beyond that, beyond these similarities between the two systems.
Is government playing the game of divide and conquer? As long as we can keep our people in a sort of a simulation of hating, division, then we can keep control. Does Do you think that's happening on a level?
It's
Because when I go around the country and I, even different cities, different shops, different towns, I genuinely think and feel that most South Africans just want to get along.
Yeah.
And they actually don't mind if you're a different skin color and a different language. There are some radicalized pockets of people, but in general, it feels like I can have a great conversation with the colored, black, Indian people in my town, and there's no hatred, there's no animosity, there's this peace thing.
Yeah.
Like and so in general, you can go through a weekend in South Africa and think, this is actually a pretty cool nation. Like, we're doing well. What are you talking about? Even in the last 2 days when I've been criticized, people are like, well, what's your problem? What's wrong with South Africa? And don't you feel free? What can't you do that makes you feel you're not free? So I get all these questions. And I go, well, we can ignore and act as if nothing is wrong. Or we can talk about these things, have the conversations, and try to see, can't we get to a better place?
Yeah.
Because shouldn't the general South African public be represented on a government level?
Yeah.
That's what I think. Especially if it's a democracy.
Yes.
And if 85% of South Africans said in the 2022 census that we identify as Christian, shouldn't our government be Christian?
Yeah.
But we're communist and socialist. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yes.
How do we get here?
So I don't know. I don't know if I've experienced racism on the street in South Africa. If some random black person has come up to me and said, "Oh, you know what, white people listen to this." But you do get the government. I've experienced that, like going to a court case where the EFF is involved. You would get
of course,
there, but that's political. And so you don't even see the radicalized elements of society other than on social media.
On your day-to-day life.
Yeah, you'll find them on X. But if we go to the shopping mall or some place around us, we won't find that. Not among white people or among black people.
Yeah.
But it is the case that the government is really pushing this. And there are many examples. Even the current president, during a political rally a few years ago, he explicitly said, if black people stop voting for the ANC, the Boers are going to come back to oppress us.
Oh my word.
So that's what Cyril Ramaphosa said. His predecessor, Jacob Zuma, said that we must remember that, and this, it's bizarre, but that's actually what he said. Everything that is wrong with South Africa should be traced back to the arrival of white people. So that means just excuse us for everything that goes wrong. Nothing is our fault. It's always white people's fault.
Yeah. And it's interesting to blame shift. Easy to blame shift.
That's exactly what it is. And so it's this divide and conquer thing in a sense that everything is their fault and you need to keep voting for us because those people over there are evil people and you need to keep believing that they are evil people.
And it's living in the past. It's not moving on. We are neither really living in the present, looking at the way we are led, and we are either like, no, that's terrible. We are always defined by that. Or there's like a weird form of future tripping. If you don't, then this country will.
Yes.
But then
if
while
we do this, then we're going to become a utopia. If we just do this expropriation without compensation, we're all going to be rich and wealthy. Yes.
Oh man, it's so sad because it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
How much of that? Can we go into a little bit of conspiracy theory? How much of that, the whole divide and conquer, the weird decisions that our government has made that doesn't even seem truly African, how much of it is because they are being funded by other countries?
Yes.
Do you think?
No,
I know this is dangerous waters, but we seem to have gotten money from Russia, China, Iraq.
Yeah.
Is there truth to
Iran.
that? Yeah, Iran, sorry.
Yeah. So, no, I think there's definitely truth in that.
And that must sway them and influence the way they lead.
I think there's two levels to that. I think the one level is what you're mentioning now. China has done a lot in Africa in terms of, you could say, strengthening its grip on African countries with this Belt and Road Initiative, as they call it. I'm
not familiar. What's that?
It's sort of an initiative to do Chinese developments in Africa.
Oh, I've seen that in Mozambique.
Yeah, it's
They're
in Mozambique.
literally building bridges, but they bring in Chinese to do everything.
Yes,
Wow.
they built the headquarters of the African Union.
Sure.
There was a study, I can't remember the number, but how many presidential palaces in Africa, houses where state presidents live, were actually built by the Chinese for these countries.
Ooh, okay. So they're getting influence. All right.
Yeah. And so that's one example. And then, of course, with this war in the Middle East and the extent to which other countries are trying to get South Africa to take this stance. So that is definitely a level to that. But there's another level, which is the more ideological level. And I think that's, again, where the academics come in, is how these crazy ideologies and theories that have been developed, unfortunately, many of them from America, from the USA, these really crazy ideological ideas.
Like critical race theory,
things like that.
Radical gender ideology, all
exactly.
these things, which
Those
are very
things,
anti-African.
Exactly, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
And then they sort of get imported through the universities, and then they are taught, and then unfortunately it's taught at journalism schools, and it's unfortunately journalists especially have become victims of that. But it's also a funding thing. So there are media outlets in South Africa. It's not even a conspiracy. It's published that are funded by, for example, the Open Society Foundation, by George Soros, who have made it very clear that they have this ideological goal that they want to pursue.
Wow.
And they fund institutions that promote their ideology.
Yes.
And then those institutions that receive the funding obviously pursue that ideology, but they then present themselves as being objective, just reporting the news.
Yeah, I remember the news being news when I was young. You would watch the 7 o'clock news, or the 6:30, I can't remember, and Rian Kruiwagen would literally just read facts. This happened today.
Yeah.
Just facts. Then this
person said that and that person said that.
Then you can go, what do I think about that? And, draw your conclusions and whatever. Now, news is opinion and agenda driven.
Yes.
And it started in the States. I remember being there the first time and going, this news is weird. They're not just reading facts, they're giving opinion.
Yeah.
And it was jarring for me the first time. But that has now crept into our thing. I mean, you see headlines starting with words like right-wing activist, Christian nationalist, da-da-da-da. That's not facts.
Yeah.
That's your opinion.
Yeah. It's your interpretation. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the kind of stuff you see. And I've also now been thrown into that category, right-wing nationalist. I've been called a fascist. I've been, there's all these terms that people are throwing around.
Yeah.
Some of them I had to go and look up what it actually means. And I go, why do they think that? Like, it doesn't even make sense. I love God. I believe in the Bible. I want to see our nation thrive. No, you're a right-wing nationalist. Like, what?
And a fascist.
I'm sure you've been called names as well.
Yeah, I've been called everything, yes.
And it's like, that's not your heart, that's not your focus, but it's easy to sort of paint you with that brush and there can only be one reason. Because you're doing something that's upsetting the apple cart that they want to go in this one direction, and you're like, jy's 'n vlieg in die salf. Jy maak hierdie vir ons moeilik. Let's just brush you with that brush that to disqualify you.
We label you and we put you in a box.
Yes, so that we can keep doing this, the ideological thing that most seem to be falling for.
Yeah.
Man.
But where it's gotten worse now is through AI.
Oof, okay.
And so I saw that, and there are many examples. I just saw it this week. I was doing a thing on farm killings, and I know there's actually an official definition of what constitutes a farm attack that was sort of accepted by the government, and it's in the National Rural Safety Strategy. It's a document, and it was published in 2011, and I know that in the 2019 version, they updated the definition. And so I went on Google and I searched National Rural Safety Strategy 2019 or something like that, newest version. And then Google has this new thing where it gives you this AI box, like the most important things you need to know.
Yes.
And I literally only asked, I want the document. That's where can I get this document? And then Google gave me this thing saying, we must remember that the white genocide thing is just a conspiracy, and we must remember that the victims of farm murders are actually people of all races, but there are racists who are saying these things. And it gave me this ideological treatise on how to make sense of what's happening on farms in South Africa.
Wow.
When my question was just, where's the document? I want to read the document.
Give me the fact.
Yeah.
But then you got...
I literally just Googled for the document.
My goodness.
And ChatGPT, of course, does the same thing as if you ask it certain questions, especially on issues like South Africa.
Yeah.
You can see how, and then Wikipedia as well, unfortunately. But
that's interesting. It's been captured in a way.
Yeah. And so I think if people... There's great things with AI, great opportunities. But if people lose their ability to think for themselves, they're going to become victims of this thing. And people need to learn how to sort of read through what the AI is trying to tell you and make their own conclusions. And unfortunately, it's with the news as well. Like you said, you can't we don't have Rian Kruiwagen anymore the way we used to. We now have News 24 or Daily Maverick that gives us the news through a particular lens, and they present that lens as being objective, which of course it isn't.
Well, I could see it even in the questions. Like I got an email from the Daily Maverick to ask me about this 180 organization we've started. So I got three questions. Number one, what's the purpose of your organization? Number two, what's your legal status? Because I can't find that you're registered yet.
Okay.
And we're in the process of registering.
Yeah.
And then third, she said, are you getting money from America or Israel? I was like, wow, tell me what your ideology is without telling me what your ideology is. It was like, oh my word, already wanting to paint it, as that. It's so interesting.
You already know that Daily Maverick is not going to write a positive article about this.
No.
It's going to be colored with some attack and some assault.
I knew that, but I've decided after going through a few rounds of being attacked by the media, being attacked on social media, I'm at the point where I've personally decided I'm going to engage.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to answer the questions. What they do with my answers, let's see what happens. I must say, in the same breath, I had a positive experience speaking to a lady from Die Burger, which I was surprised by, to be honest. She asked me the questions and gave my answers the way that I gave them, and now people can do with that what they want. Some still criticize, and some still go, who do you think you are, blah, blah, blah. But then many, our organization almost doubled. It did double in size in a day.
Oh, wow.
Because of this publicity. So, very interesting. But it just shows you that it is possible. There are journalists who have integrity. But I think the system makes it hard, even for them. But we have to, like you say, think for yourself. Assess all the information. But it is hard to be in a world where everyone on both of these hard lines, left and right or whatever, keep telling each other, educate yourself. Educate yourself. And then there was like, I am educated. And I was like, I'm also educated. I know what I'm talking about. No, I know what I'm talking about. I was there. I was also there. Okay. No one's going to win this argument.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever won an X argument, like a Twitter argument? No, it's just mud throwing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, you know what I would say?
It's quite a game.
It sort of links up to the topic that we've discussed so far. Is the difference there is, once again, some people want you to educate yourself in the theory, and others would say educate yourself in reality. And because the two are not the same thing. And oftentimes, I think to a significant extent, the battle that we are in today is a battle between reality and theory.
That's such a good summary. I think that's true. And it comes back to objective reality versus subjective reality.
That's exactly.
And it comes back to facts versus feelings.
Yes, because the feelings become the facts, or the facts have to comply with the feelings.
Yes.
And as far as it don't, then there's a problem with the facts.
I think it all started with, not all started, but I think one of the modern day catalysts for this way of thinking was the phrase, my truth and your truth.
Yes.
I think it was coined by Oprah, and how that became a thing.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one of our directors of the new organization recently, and in our conversation, I said this sort of spontaneously, and he went, you should write that down. and I said that, so, your truth is valid as long as I don't live my truth.
Yes.
So, which is a circular argument.
That's exactly. The truth of person X depends on person Y rejecting his truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense.
What makes it even worse is person Y's truth is objective, and person X's truth is subjective.
But because I feel so strongly about my truth, you have to. And if you don't, you're not tolerant, which equals hatred, which equals I'm going to put phobe at the end of a word and throw that onto you.
Everything
you're a
phobe
now.
Yeah.
And I went, how did you get from I just disagree with you to you hate me to I'm this? Like, it's crazy how that mindset has become such a big thing. And it's sad because we cannot, and this is where people, I mean, I'm getting hatred from left and right on this, but I do appreciate and am inspired by what Charlie Kirk did by having conversations.
Yeah.
Hard conversations about difficult subjects with people that disagree with him.
Yeah.
I think we need more of that. And I'll say it publicly. I will gladly debate, talk, have a conversation with anyone who vehemently disagrees with me. Let's see if we can find common ground, you know? Maybe it's possible.
Yeah.
Have you had debates like that? Do you do debates? Where you actually have someone who's really different than you are, and you reach a point where you both can go, I see what you mean, and maybe we can find common ground here. Has that ever happened?
Yeah, to an extent. Not with people in the media.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Not with people who have vested interests in maintaining their particular perspective.
Okay.
I, for example, if I might mention him by name, I'm friends with Bouwer Bosch.
Okay.
Bouwer, the singer and from Straatlikers. And Bouwer is very outspoken on his views, and he's gotten some criticism for that. The same with me, and the same with you.
Yeah.
But my experience, and we've had some great conversations where we in person, where we spoke about, we don't agree on these things, but let's talk about it. And I always find him to be, for example, very respectful and very open towards having a conversation. And I actually wish more people was like that.
I think we must be able to do that. Yeah. It would be nice.
But I think some people out there are just not open for conversation or for persuasion. But I think even then we should have those conversations, because sometimes you're not convincing the person you're speaking with, but you might convince someone who's listening to the conversation.
Yes. And I think that helps. Yeah. And that's what I liked about Charlie as well, and that he was able to take the conversation nationally, and even globally.
Yeah, exactly. That Charlie is a good example of that.
Yeah, I think so. So there's two more things that I think we need to discuss. And I'm sure once you leave here today, I'll go, man, I should have asked him that.
That's
so
always the
hoping
case.
one day you'll come back. But there's an elephant in the room with you and me speaking today that I feel I need to address, and it's farm murders. And a video that I made at the end of 2017. And I think you might have people upset with you talking to me today because, of what you stand for.
I remember you said something, people were angry, and then you came out and I think you made a second video. I remember that.
Yeah,
yes.
It kind of just made it worse though, the second one. But I made a video in the light of, do you remember Black Monday?
Yes,
so,
I remember Black Monday.
So it's basically, what is it? It was 2017, so it's almost 10 years ago, 8 years ago, also just before Halloween, like this time of the year-ish, there was a farm murder in Klapmuts.
Yes.
A friend of the farmer made a video in his bakkie where he was just so upset. That thing went viral.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And then people said,
that started the Black Monday protest.
Let's have a protest, call it Black Monday. And, initially it seemed like a very good idea. Like, we need to make noise to bring attention to this massive issue, which is a massive issue. But then I think this is one of the first times we saw the effect of social media and WhatsApp and all these things, like, because it suddenly became very polarizing, like super polarizing. I remember the one thing that really upset me was there's a guy that made a video where he was loading his gun, getting ready for war.
I remember everyone was making videos.
Yes,
I didn't see the gun video. It was
so big.
But there was a time where everyone was posting videos about
it. Became so big, and I was driving from Somerset West to Stellenbosch at the time, I was seeing all these things, and something was shifting in me, and it was going like, why is no one talking about this from a biblical Christian perspective? Like, it just seems that hatred is now swelling, and it's again black, white, and that's not the point. The point is people are dying on farms, and that's horrible. It shouldn't happen. But there's now something that is a good reason for being upset and doing something. It became something else. And so I felt moved to say something. And I thought I was going to speak to a very small Christian audience who will understand what I'm saying. And then it went bad. I was, for the first time, I experienced a video going viral.
Yeah.
But for all the wrong reasons. And I got attacked big time, like huge, massive. I got put on the same list as many other people who were being boycotted by the Afrikaners. People would break my CD, take photos of it. Yeah. Because I said a few things that upset them. And what I said in essence was, listen, it's terrible that farmers are being murdered. But instead of having a Black Monday for only that, why don't we have a positive thing where we say, hey, let's have White Monday? Because, guys, it's going to be the day before Halloween. I don't think that's going to read well.
Oh, yes.
And we should probably rather have a white, and let's do it for all South African lives. Because I think I said all South African lives matter. Like before there was even BLM. I said all South African lives matter. We have this problem. But I'm living the Cape. We have children being shot by gangsters. That's also horrible. Let's stand up for all lives of all South Africans. And somehow all that Afrikaans people, especially Boer people, heard was, I think farm murders
you don't care about farm murders.
I don't care.
Yeah.
And it became this thing, and it blew up massive. And I was completely misunderstood. And looking back, I probably could have said it better, communicated it differently. I don't know. But my experience was someone needed to say something.
Yeah.
I got thousands of personal letters of support. Like, I'm so glad someone said something, and I'm so glad you said that. I wish I had the guts to say that. But online, it was like, people said, I wish you died at birth. You know, your children are like, they said horrible things. It was my first experience of that. And there's still people who are angry. That might speak to you and say, how could you speak to him? You know, he hates farmers. He hates farmers. And that's not even almost true. So I just wanted to say to you, as someone who, you know, stands for that, represents that to an extent, you know, from the bottom of my heart, I think any life being taken is wrong. It shouldn't happen, you know. But I have a heart for the whole of South Africa and the whole of our nation. And I think that's important that people hear that. But it seems like you weren't even aware of this.
No, I remember it now. I remember there was this video. Yeah.
So I don't know if you were even aware or if it upset you or if you have an opinion on that. But it was a very interesting time.
Yeah.
And since then, I find that people are still very upset about that. And so I can say sorry for bringing it across in the wrong way. But my heart was not to say I don't care. I don't think it's a big deal. It was to say, hey, yes, stand up for that. But we should actually stand up for the whole of South Africa because we people are being killed all over the place. And I remember, I'm going on a tangent now, but just humor me for a moment.
No, please.
I remember going to the South African Music Awards for the first time. And sitting there as a white Afrikaans man and realizing we really are a minority. and because I sat there and I realized, man, I actually have no idea of the country that I live in. I grew up in a bubble. I don't know half of the genres of music that was there. I've never even heard of. And there are millions of South Africans listening to that.
Yep. And
I realized, man, I don't know my own country. And since then, I've tried to at least be more aware, connect, you know, speak to people. And shortly after that whole farm murder video debacle, I made a music video and a song with Loyiso Bala, Neville D. Because at that time, our country was super polarized.
Yes.
Racial divide was next level. It still is, but there was like
I remember
it was
sort
very,
of a spike.
it was bad. And I said, we can complain or we can do something positive. So I wrote a song called It's Time, and it was a call specifically to Christians, yes, but, we're 85% Christian, so most of the nation, to say, hey, let's get over all these things that divide us, and let's focus on the things that can unite us. And so I got a black brother, Loyiso Bala, and a colored brother, Neville D. And I said, what if black, colored, white stand next to each other and sing something positive,
Yeah.
And we did that, and it came out, and it was really well received. But for me, what stood out from that experience was I could sit next to a Xhosa from Eastern Cape, who was basically raised by his uncle, who was a petrol jochie, and a colored who was raised in Cape Town gangsterism. I mean, he saw people die every day. That was his reality. And he just survived, and they got to meet Christ, love Jesus, married women, each married a wife, had children, and we could have a conversation. We were united by the belief that we shared and have common ground. Even though we came from 3 different South Africas, I realized it that day. We didn't grow up in the same South Africa.
Yeah, yeah.
And it comes back to what you're saying, there's communities.
Yeah.
But that really struck me. And out of that whole experience, I realized we are so hurt, broken, traumatized that, we need healing. We need to become whole, and we need to find that thing that will unite us.
Yeah.
I believe that's having a relationship with God, but even if it's not specifically that, at least we need to find something positive that we can, unite around. Sorry, I spoke for a very long time now, but I wanted to share that because I know people listening to this and supporting you, they might go, why didn't you talk about that? Because it is still a sensitive thing 8 years later. So I wanted to mention that to you.
Oh, thank you.
And I hope you hear my heart, that in no way, shape or form have I ever thought farm murders is not a crisis.
Yeah.
It is a crisis.
Well, if I can, interesting enough, I had a similar experience.
Okay.
Where, did you say this was in 2017? Mine was 2015.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was I know it was 2015.
All right.
So also on the topic of farm murders. So what happened to me was Carte Blanche did a story on farm murders in 2015. And they came to interview me because I was campaigning against it. And we had like a 40-minute interview.
Wow.
And it was a long interview, and we spoke about all the different aspects thereof and so forth, and how to make sense of it and all of that. And then at one point they asked me, is it true that it is only white people who are attacked in farm attacks? And I obviously said, no, it's not true. I said, it's not just the farmers who are killed, not just white farmers, it's also sometimes workers who are killed, and there are also black farmers who are murdered, which is just objectively true.
Yeah.
And then Carte Blanche cannot publish a 40-minute interview, so they have to choose what to publish and what not to publish.
Oh, man.
And so the presenter said, they spoke about farm murders, and I was then with AfriForum at the time, and then the presenter said, some people say there's a racial dynamic to farm murders, but even AfriForum agrees that there's no racial element. And then they show me saying, it's not true that it's just the white farmers.
Oh, man.
And so it was out of context.
Yeah.
And I got so much
Oof, I can imagine.
backlash to that. But I took that a bit personal because generally I'm very stoic. I don't take criticism too personally. I don't even, sometimes I hear someone wrote an opinion piece and attacked me or something, and I don't even read it because it doesn't bother me that much. But that time it bothered me. And I remember one that bothered me particularly was it's people on the right, of course. And there was one Afrikaans woman who said, maybe his children should be boiled to death, and then he will come to learn what the reality is in South Africa.
Oof.
And I took that. My children were like babies, and I took
that's
that very,
rough.
and I contacted her, and I sent her a photo of my kids, and I said, which one of my children would you like to boil to death? And then she was very defensive, and I shouldn't have done that probably, but I've just learned from that when you speak in the public sphere, I mentioned the example of the one time I quoted that guy who spoke about hanging the philosophers and the academics.
Yeah.
And I was then attacked for encouraging violence towards academics. So sometimes you say things and then you think back and you say, maybe I should have said that thing differently.
Yeah.
Or maybe,
Yeah,
and
do.
sometimes you said it properly, but it was taken out of context.
Yes.
And so I think we should not judge a person by one particular thing that person has said. You should sort of look at the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
And I think so. What you said now resonates with me because of my own personal experience on the same type of thing.
All right. No, it's because it is a sensitive subject, and and I get why. I had many conversations after that with people around the subject, and I learned a lot. I grew a lot, but I also realized it needed to happen in a way for my own story. But that's for a different day. But it was a very, very difficult time, but I realized how deep that wound goes for many, and it doesn't help to ignore it. You have to recognize that. My one friend said to me, "You must realize that the way that it came across for some is that imagine your child dies, and someone comes to say condolences, but they say, yeah, children die every day."
Yeah,
that's how it came across, and that struck me. I'm like, okay, maybe that is how it came across, and for that I am sorry, because it shouldn't have come across that way. But it, what I realized, and I think the more I mature, hopefully, our nation is wounded, and we have trauma, and there's a part of this solution. We talk about solutions. I hope.
Yeah.
I think part of the solution has to be that some healing needs to take place. What are your thoughts on a healthy version of repentance, forgiveness, reconciliation between people groups in the past, and so that we can for once and for all move on? Do you think it's necessary? Do you think there's been enough of that? Would it help the process going forward?
Yeah, I think we're stuck in a vicious circle.
Seems that way.
Where the vicious circle is basically the solution to the problem is that the government has to fix it, but the government isn't able to fix it. Even if they were efficient, they wouldn't have been able to fix it, because it's not the type of problem that is fixed through government policies and laws. And so as far as the government keeps failing, they cannot say, well, we are a failure. So they have to blame someone for the failure.
Yeah.
And so it's this thing of let's put it this way. I often quote Thomas Sowell on this, because he wrote a book. He's an economist, but he wrote a book in the 80s. He's a black economist in America. And the book's called The Economics and Politics of Race.
Sure.
And I actually think the book should be called The Economics and Politics of Culture, because it's more about culture than it is about race. And so he did a study, like an international study, about oppressed groups or groups that have experienced significant hardship, and then what happened to those groups economically after that.
Okay.
And he found that some became prosperous and some didn't.
Okay.
And so how do you make sense of that? And he found that almost the entire answer goes back to culture. And he says that he couldn't find a single example where a community these were his words, was lifted or alleviated from poverty into affluence through government intervention.
Wow.
He says every time the government tries to do it, it fails. Because at the end of the day, and these are also his summary. His summary is 3 things need to happen. Is hard work, skills development, and a culture of saving.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and so you can work hard and you can have skills, but then you can just buy Ferraris and Lamborghinis and make debt, and then you will eventually not succeed.
Exactly.
So you need to spend less than you earn, and build up something. And he says if you don't have that combination, there's nothing the government can do. But what's happening in South Africa, unfortunately, is the government is disincentivizing that, because the government is telling people, we are the solution. You have to vote for us and we're going to fix this problem. And the solution is redistribution. We're going to take stuff and redistribute it. But there's literally not a single example where that has ever worked. And in as far as it fails, the explanation is then we haven't done this aggressively. We need aggressively enough. We need to be more aggressive.
Oh my word!
And so within this sort of vicious circle, I actually don't see a solution. I could say the solution is respect between communities and recognition, but the underlying problem here is that people are being trapped in a vicious circle of government dependency with the expectation that the government would make their lives better, when it's only people themselves who can make their lives better. And when if we don't break through that, I don't see a solution. And that goes back to the problem of a too centralized government and a government that has too much power.
And it's such a crazy thing, because it comes back to it's a way of thinking. You know, when the government tells you don't worry, we'll give you welfare that you don't have to earn, that you don't have to work for, and then there's no quid pro quo responsibility necessary, then what are you going to do? You know, I mean, Margaret Thatcher, if I understand correctly, warned against that in Britain, and she was voted out because of it, because the other guys ran on welfare. And look what happened. It's a welfare, I think, is one of the worst ways to run a country. Especially if it's no quid pro quo or there's no incentivization. It cannot be good, because people are, as you said, made to be productive, made to be part of something bigger. If I'm just getting stuff, I mean, one of the things that upset me the most about what's happening in our country is 10, 11, 12-year-old girls getting pregnant because they can get a 350 Rand grant.
Yes.
That's a huge problem. And they keep doing it.
Yeah.
And blaming something else.
It facilitates societal breakdown.
It's insane. And those children are having children. What's going to happen to those children?
Someone told me the other day he met a lady who is a 32-year-old grandmother. She's like, I'm 32-year-old and I've just become a grandmother.
Wow.
And it's largely because of this.
Yeah. It's crazy. And that's being perpetuated in many ways. And so, I mean, a shift of the way of thinking needs to take place. Yeah. So, now, back to what I said earlier, two things. The second thing that I'd like to hear is the how, practically. Lex Libertas, you've got a mission, you've got a vision, decentralized government, communities governing themselves. How does that work, and what would it look like in South Africa, do you think?
So it could take different forms, and I think one of the things we need to break before I get to answering your question is there's this weird narrative in South Africa that there are only two political systems. It's apartheid or ANC government. And when you criticize ANC government, we spoke about this earlier, when you criticize ANC government, that means you want apartheid back. And so we need to break that false dichotomy to broaden. Makes sense. So a lot of what we have to do is to talk about these things and to just raise awareness.
Okay.
And so there are many different systems. The Americans have a federal system where different states govern themselves. They have their own governors and so forth, which is not the same as our provinces. It has much more autonomy. The French, for example, in Canada are French Canadians, but there's certain laws and legislation protecting their community, their culture, their language, and so forth. The Scottish are part of the United Kingdom, but they have a significant degree of autonomy over their own affairs. They have their own parliament, and they are all over the world. There are such examples. But whenever you say what's happening in South Africa isn't working, people say, oh, you want to go back to apartheid.
Wow.
And what we're saying is we need to look at all these things that are happening all over the world and find a better system.
Okay.
And that, again, that could take different forms. And where we are now, so Lex Libertas is a think tank, but we want to position it as a participatory think tank. So it's not just an office with a bunch of nerds writing articles and publishing papers. It has to be part of what we do. But we want to publish ideas and then have conversations about that,
Okay.
and get people on board and get people to write their ideas for us, and we publish their ideas and we talk about that. So we want to start this. I don't want to say intellectual movement. You could say that, but I would say more it's a movement in terms of having conversations about what would a better South Africa look like.
It sounds like a national dialogue.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. Yes,
A real one.
yes, and so it has to be research driven, and then to publish papers and say this is how what are the problems in Belgium? They have the Flemish and they have the Wallonians that are French speaking, and why is it not working? Or what are the Canadians doing with what they call the Nunavut? And there are examples all over. And then we can say what solutions have been tried. What does the Swiss canton system look like? Because in Switzerland, the cities basically govern themselves, and so the president of Switzerland is almost irrelevant, because what is relevant in Switzerland is who's in charge of your city. And the cities, they have the self-governance system throughout Switzerland. So we can look at that and say, is that something that could be applied to South Africa? And so at the moment, that's the question we often get is okay, so what is the end goal?
Yeah.
Where we are now is we think we can describe an end goal, but we don't want to describe it in too much detail, because we want to start a process to get people involved in thinking about the end goal.
Okay.
And so the end goal is, to put it in sort of broad terms, is a decentralized political system, and a system where people have much more autonomy. So autonomy or self-governance.
Yeah. What would you say to people that criticize that and say you just want a whole bunch of Oranias around the country?
Well, I think the irony about Orania as an example is there are a whole bunch of Oranias around the country already.
Yeah.
But when it's Orania, people say it's a whites-only thing. But I mean, there are black cultural communities everywhere. Like if you go to KwaZulu-Natal, or in the Eastern Cape, any province in the country, you'll find there are traditional communities that have their own culture, that speak their own language, that do things according to their way. But the people don't go to those communities and say it's a blacks-only community, and people don't interpret the desire to preserve Xhosa culture as a blacks-only project. They think, oh well, that's good to do that. Yeah. But when there's a white dynamic,
so
then it becomes whites-only.
Yeah, so that's a way of thinking that needs to shift.
Yeah, we would need to work on that, definitely.
Yeah. Wow.
So I think what we need to do, we do 5 things. Our sort of strategy is 5 things based on what I've said now. The first is research, as I discussed now. The second is local advocacy. It's to speak to more people in South Africa, to do podcasts like these, but to go to different communities to talk about these ideas and so forth. The third is international outreach, to get more support from outside of South Africa for these ideas. The fourth is tangible action. So it's taking the research and taking the support and to convert that into people actually doing things. And that could be activistic, it could be arranging conferences, it could be arranging speaking events. So we need to do stuff. We can't just talk about ideas all the time. And then the fifth is creating de facto realities. In other words, if the government is not fulfilling what it's supposed to be doing, we need to pursue a course of action where people fill the void by just doing things themselves. And there are organizations that are doing great work on that already. The easiest example is security or safety. Yeah. If the police aren't keeping you safe, you should say, I'm paying taxes, you should keep me safe. But you can't wait for them to keep you safe while your community is under siege. You have to fill the void with your own solutions. Yeah. And so we believe we have a significant role to play in that, in helping with the process to get that done, but also from a research perspective, and sort of channeling that process and supporting the organizations that are already doing great work. And we believe these 5 things are connected. So if you do any one of them, international outreach, that alone is not going to be a solution, or looking after your own safety in your community, that alone is not a solution. What we really think, if we do these 5 things collectively, they strengthen each other. It's like a flywheel almost. So it's the research, but the research strengthens the advocacy work, and the advocacy work strengthens the international advocacy work, and that strengthens the the tangible action, the activities that we do, and that strengthens the organizing communities. So that's sort of the movement that we think and especially next year is going to be very important, because Lex Libertas is very new. It's just a few months old. It's a startup. And so we need to get it settled. We need to get enough people to make small contributions to get the funding ready so we can appoint people and we can initiate projects. And then we have a lot of work to do, especially 2026 is going to be very important for us.
You've already done some extensive traveling, and from what I understand, you've visited different nations, their conservative movements, let's put it as such. What has your experience been connecting with those movements in different nations? What's the feedback you're getting? What's the kind of support you're getting? And what do you see happening globally on the conservative front?
I see there's some real energy and excitement in what you might call the international conservative movement. I think the stereotype has shifted, or it is beginning to shift. I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, the idea of being conservative was associated with old white men, and old people who are not sort of disconnected. And to be a leftist was to be cool, or to be cool was to be leftist. And that strangely has shifted. If you think of what it means to be leftist today, you think of people like Bernie Sanders in America, you think of people like, what's his name, Tim Walsh, who was the VP candidate for Kamala Harris.
Old white men.
Yeah, that's the irony. People say, oh, you guys are just a bunch of old white men. Now the old white men are the leftists.
That's so funny.
That's and when you go to these international conservative conferences, it's young people. It's predominantly attended by people in their 20s, in their 30s.
That's exciting.
Who are charismatic professional people. They are lawyers, or they have started their own businesses. They wear suits. They are properly dressed. They are dynamic people, and so that's really, really something to see. There's sort of this thing happening, which I think is quite exciting.
Wow!
And I think what's also good for us is it is as if South Africa is being rediscovered in the world.
Okay.
Because in the 90s, people thought that, okay, now we've solved South Africa. We can we don't need to think about South Africa anymore, because of, the ANC took over and the new South Africa, and Mandela became the president, and, the bad, horrible white people were put in their place, and now there's justice and whatever. And people can just see that it's not working. And so I think people are trying to figure out, why is it not working? Because South Africa was internationally regarded as the example that should be followed. The rest of the world should be more like South Africa. And that was during the 90s and the early 2000s. Yeah. And now people are starting to realize, but we've been told that we need to be like South Africa, but looking at what's happening in South Africa, it doesn't seem like we want to be like South Africa.
Yeah.
So what's going on there? And I think there's sort of an intellectual curiosity that has developed.
Yeah.
And I think there's some great opportunities for us to help give some context and to channel that into, as I said, into practical support, so that it's not just people who are curious or who are interested, but who can in some way become involved to pressure towards a more sustainable solution.
How do you define conservatism or the conservative movement? Because some people might still go, that they've got an old mindset or an incorrect mindset, maybe even. I was branded a couple of months ago as behoudend. Afrikaans, old Afrikaans word for basically the same thing.
Preservant is sort of what it means.
Preservant, It's too. You explain how you see conservatism.
So I would say, I mentioned Edmund Burke earlier. He said, I think Edmund Burke said a bunch of things. That he sort of, people describe him today as the father of conservatism, but he sort of, one thing was look at reality and learn from experience. I would describe, in my frame of reference, I'm a big fan of Cicero, the Roman orator from ancient Rome, before Rome became an empire. He's sort of, to my mind, the quintessential conservative. And he said, he was this Republican guy, he wanted the best for his people. And I think one thing that stands out for me is gratitude. That to me is one of the defining words of conservatism, is being grateful for the things that you have that you don't deserve.
Wow.
And wanting to preserve those things. And that's another term that has today become very tainted, is privilege. Privilege today is a horrible thing. If you have privilege, then that's horrible. But privilege is supposed to be a wonderful thing. It means that you have certain things because people who were here before you made some sacrifices, and you have benefits. You can live off the sacrifices of people who were here before you, and that should inspire you to make sacrifices yourself to leave something for those who are going to be here after you.
That's so good.
And so what I love about Cicero is he wrote. We know so much about his life because he wrote like 2,000 letters, and it was like, I don't know, 50 or 60 years before Christ. He wrote basically everything in his life he wrote to a friend, so we know his entire life story. And in one of the letters, I read many of his letters because I read like a compilation of it. And in one of the letters, that sort of defines him for me, and to me that defines conservatism. He speaks about gratitude, and he says, "I'm grateful for all the things our republic has given me, and I'm grateful for all the things I can give to our republic." So it's being grateful for the fact that you receive certain things that you don't deserve, but it's also being grateful for the fact that you have certain talents that you can use for the betterment of others. It's grateful for being in the position where you can make certain sacrifices. And that to me is what conservatism is gratitude.
Wow.
And living in a life of gratitude.
That puts that famous phrase, is it Reagan, who said, "Do not ask what your country can do for you."
It's Kennedy. Yeah.
Kennedy, sorry.
Ask what you can do for your country.
Yes, that's kind of putting the same thing in different words.
Yes,
But I love that idea. I've never heard it put that way. Thank you. The gratitude, because that's also the antidote for entitlement.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it.
Which is the problem we're sitting with. People think I just deserve to have stuff and to be, have what I can't have or never had. But then the problem with entitlement is you're not willing to work. You're not willing to put in time, sacrifice, show up consistently. And that's what we need. Yeah. We need a productive nation. And a productive nation is a collective of people who rock up for work. Yes. And want to be part of something bigger, right? And then you are grateful. If you have a grateful attitude, that makes so much sense.
So a healthy society is one in which people receive things that they don't deserve.
Yeah.
Because
someone else worked.
Someone else made some sacrifices. And so it's gratitude for receiving these things, but it's also gratitude for participating in that process so that someone else can receive certain things as a result of the work that you've been doing. So being grateful for the fact that you can make sacrifices.
So good.
That to me is what it boils down to essentially.
I love that. It actually makes me think of grace. If you think gratitude, grace, root word.
It's the same thing.
Because grace is getting what you don't deserve. And that's really a healthy place to start from.
Yes.
If you are grateful, you're thankful, you're respectful, and you want to be part of the thing that blessed you.
Yes.
That's something I really enjoyed. I don't know if you saw it, but there's this classic clip a couple of months ago. Schwarzenegger was on The View. And The View is very left.
Yeah, I know The View. I don't think I saw the clip, no.
So Schwarzenegger was on The View, and they asked him, as an immigrant to America, they set it up. They set it up so that he would criticize Trump.
Oh, yes.
And he did the exact opposite.
Oh, really?
He said exactly now what you said. He said, I am grateful that I was able to become part of this great nation. And I will do everything in my ability to give back.
Yes.
And he went on this, and you could see their faces change. And they were like, we did not expect him to say that. Because, he was the governor of California. So they were expecting something else. But he understands why he immigrated. And that he was grateful that he did legally.
He got some opportunities. He
got opportunities. His whole life changed. Yeah, exactly. That's such a great angle. I've never thought of conservatism that way. Thank you. That's so good.
Well, I think you're right. That is the antidote to entitlement ideology.
Yes,
is living in gratitude.
Imagine a whole country full of grateful people who just wants to build. That would be amazing.
Well. Hopefully we can get there.
I love that. Thank you. That was such a great way to maybe end our conversation. But do you have any final thoughts, things you want to let people know? How can they be part of what you're doing? Where can they get hold of your books? Well,
thank you for having me on the show, and congratulations with your new initiative as well. And I'd be happy to support that and follow that. If people want to support Lex Libertas, It's the Latin spelling Lex Libertas.
It's on your shirt, I see.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So the website is lexlibertas.org.za. As I mentioned, it is a new initiative. It's very new. It's just a few months old. So we're still sort of in the establishment phase. We're still recruiting. And so if people want to make a financial contribution, they could do so on the website. We'd be very grateful for that. But if they just want to become involved, if they want to learn more, they can do that. And obviously we're on social media, so people can find us there. But we're very excited about this. And as I said, 2026 is going to be a very important year for us. And we're excited about this idea of a participatory think tank. The idea that we're going to publish some research. We want to get others to do some research and provide it to us. And we're going to publish that and have conversations. And so I want to encourage people to become involved with that. And they can obviously do that through our website and sign up. If it's sign up to the newsletter, sign up as a contributor. Yeah. And we're going to arrange these activities. That's why I'm down here in the Cape right now, is to sort of set up structures down here in Cape Town and Stellenbosch area as well. So we're looking forward to that.
Is there a specific focus in your efforts with the think tank to include young people, students, or because I think that's important?
Yes. So up in Pretoria, we've got a bunch of young people who reached out to us.
Right.
Who I didn't know 3 months ago. Yeah. They sent us emails or whatever, and they said, how can I become involved? And so we're definitely going to do that. And we want to do it down here as well.
So you are seeing a similar thing in South Africa with young people wanting to live in a more conservative way, the healthy definition of that? Okay, that's awesome.
I'm definitely seeing that.
That's so good.
It's so interesting to read the emails. They would send me these long emails. And they would say, I'm a Christian and I believe my Christianity is important and I'm proud of my culture and I love Afrikaans and I want to do something to preserve that.
Awesome.
Almost not knowing that if you said these things 10 years ago, it would have been right-wing or it would have been old white men type. That would have been the association. And now we have young men and women in their 20s. And it's really, I'm really excited about that. So I think we're going to be a very youthful organization.
That's awesome.
Older people have a lot to contribute. And so especially in terms of research and sharing ideas.
Wisdom.
But we're already shifting towards a significant focus on self-development. So for an example, something that I didn't propose this, although I'm excited about the idea, some of these young people who became involved came to us and said, we want to start a book club. Now book clubs are sort of associated, it's the old people who do book clubs. But we have a bunch of people in their 20s who said, let's identify a bunch of books that we can read, and then we have discussions about what can we learn from them.
That's great.
Yeah.
Imagine if you get young people to read Cicero or
exactly.
Plato or Aristotle. I mean, that I've seen a lot of Charlie's things. He encouraged people to go and read the original thinkers about republic, democracy,
what
conservatism.
Did Aristotle say and
because that's where the ideas came from. And they've been distorted recently, but it's centuries old, solid ideas that society's been built on. And I mean, that's actually what, in a way, how I understand it is conserving means conserving that which was good.
Yes.
Judeo-Christian values that built Western society. It was built on something.
Yeah.
And we seem to have lost that. Yeah. Let's get it back. Is that part of what you're fighting for, standing for?
Yeah, you could say it's preserving what is preserving what is good, preserving what is true, and preserving what is beautiful. I think those are the three buzzwords. I've mentioned gratitude, but in a certain sense, the good, the true, and the beautiful. That's what we want to preserve.
And that, we can say it on this podcast as well. That's scripture,
Absolutely.
Paul writes, whatever is beautiful, whatever is praiseworthy, whatever is that, focus on these things.
Yeah.
Meditate on them. Yeah. That's what we should do.
Yeah.
So good. Because we can, if you meditate on the bad and the ugly, that becomes your worldview.
It consumes you.
Yeah, it's unnecessary. Yeah. Let's do this, man. That's exciting. Thank you. Thank you, Ernst.
Very much.
Thanks for what you do. Thank you for what you stand for and the grace with which you do it. And may you, your marriage, your family, your business, and everything you do be blessed. And I hope to invite you back someday.
I'd love to come back. And when you're up in Pretoria, we'll interview you on our podcast as well. So we're looking forward to that.
Thank you. It's on the record. It's on the record. Okay. Thank you, Ernst. God bless you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the In HeinzSight BoldCast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it empowered you, equipped you, and at least made you think about a few things you may not have thought about before. We want to encourage you to leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with as many people as possible, and check out the other videos on this channel. There are some amazing conversations that you may not have heard yet from people that you may not be familiar with, but that have amazing things to share with you. So make sure you go and check them out. We also want to encourage you to go out and be bold, stand for the truth. Do not be ashamed of your biblical or more conservative worldview. It's time to stand up. It's time to speak up. Remember, boldness is contagious.